All right, welcome to Bums Talk Bass. I have a very special guest here, which is very nice because a couple guys who will not be named are not here.
Bums.
Yeah, some real bums. This is my buddy Blake Miles. We met doing college fishing. He was the president and phenom of JMU.
President, yeah, for sure. I don't know about phenom, but definitely president. They trusted me with something.
Yeah, felt the same about that. I think I think I defaultly became the president of the Rampo team just because I was the only guy with a boat left. But
Hell yeah.
Anyway, he is still tournament fishing and trying to do the thing as best as he can, kind of as I am. He's fishing the you're fishing the Virginia.
Yeah, the Virginia Elite 70.
You're still doing that this year, right?
Yeah, I'm doing the alphas that they're putting on for the second year in a row this year too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the team series that I've done since I graduated college, and then the alphas I got into this year, and that's like a high entry fee solo trail.
Yeah.
So it's, I think I pay $500 a tournament, but first place is 11 grand.
Oh wow!
And it's only a 75 boat field, and it's like, I mean, Shane Lineberger fishes with us, Chris Daves, like Prosnick. I'm trying to think, Cody Pike. I mean, all these guys have won tour events. I mean, Chris Daves won a damn what was the bat before they did the Lake Fork thing, Toyota Bass
Texas
Fest or whatever.
Fest?
Yeah, the one that had the PAA.
Yeah,
he won one of those. I mean, like we've got, and not to mention his dad is Woo Daves. Like
yeah.
Like we've got the best in the area are fishing with us, and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I know at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've heard is that Virginia Elites has been like a pretty about as big a deal as a local thing can get for a long time. Like, isn't there like a long ass waiting list to try to even get into that thing and stuff?
So they used to do it with like a random draw. And now it's, I want to say it's like a committee, like a few guys make sure that you're not a shit rocket before you get in.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they kind of just ask around about you and stuff like that. I don't know the whole deal. I'm not on the committee, but there's people every year. I mean, every year there's 5 to 10 slots that open up, and he'll fill those up with. There's probably 50 names on the list, and he picks out.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds similar to obviously a way different format. They do some weird format out there, but I know like that Champions Tour they do out in Minnesota is like a huge deal, local thing. And then outside of that, I mean, the Virginia, I'm sure there's stuff. Well, I guess probably the biggest one is the Alabama Bass Trail. But
as far as money and competitiveness, I mean, North Carolina's. They've kind of combined 2 of their trails. They used to have the Collins and the Eastern North Carolina ones. And Collins has kind of backed off their trails and are just supporting the Eastern North Carolina ones. I mean, they had 140 boats at the Chewan. They're going to have probably another 140 at Bugs at the same time we're at Bugs this weekend. So it'll be, I mean, but they're getting serious numbers, and I'm sure that'll have some staying power.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really everywhere. I mean, ever since I feel like the catalyst might have been everybody buying a bass boat over the pandemic, but it feels like there's so much more tournament demand than like I remember first growing up, at least.
I don't know, I'm torn on it because I remember growing up around here, we had the Priority Toyota trail that was paying back 140% every tournament. And had, I don't know, 100 and the small ones had 100, and they were all in the James River. And then when Priority backed out of that, it kind of folded, and we had just little tournaments here and there. We didn't have like one marquee trail, and that's when the Elite 70 really took off. It's actually the same guy that used to run the Priorities. He had started doing the Elite 70, and then when Priority backed off their support of that trail, he ramped up the Elite 70 to like more tournaments. It was only like 3 tournaments at the start.
Yeah, I feel like the participation got higher and the payouts got lower.
Yeah. Our payouts are pretty strong. I mean, we pay back I want to say like 90%. It's like $7,000 for last year. It was $6,000. So yeah, $7,000 is this year. They went up a little bit, but payout ratio stayed the same. Like everybody just wants to compete for a little more money.
Well, that's why stuff like that is succeeding better than like a BFL is nowadays. Like
I'm
I don't
not
know.
fishing any BFLs anymore. I had such a miserable time last year.
I only fished one. I definitely didn't have a miserable time.
No.
But like the thing about it is like, for it to be worth it, that has to happen like every time.
I mean, look, so I fished 6 or 7 BFLs last year, and the year before that the same. And they're fun. I like the competitiveness of it. There's 2 big things that I can't stand about it. They pay back 65% if you're lucky.
Ridiculous.
If you're lucky, they pay back 65%.
Ridiculous.
Second, people act like it is like the Bassmaster Classic and everything is on the line, and they act like idiots. Like I didn't have a ton of issues with it the first year I fished BFLs. And the Elite 70, it happens rarely, but it's the same group every time, and we all know each other. So, like,
yeah.
I was talking to John Cruz about it because Ed Loughran's fishing with us this year on the Elite 70. He's like, I've heard it's a lot like the Elite Series where you pull into a pocket and you're like, hey, Frank, like, I want to go hit these brush piles in the back. Do you care are you heading that way? Like, everybody, for the most part, is on the same page of, like, just showing each other respect. And I mean, I had a couple times this year in the BFLs where I was just like dumbfounded at the actions that people were doing.
Well, I'll tell you this. So, you know how when we were there at the Potomac, it was a 2-dayer. And
no, that's Potomac. Screw that. They get all up on top of each other there.
Well, the first day, I saw a couple people run past me. But in terms of fishing, nobody was fishing any of the stuff I was fishing. It was actually shocking. Like on the Potomac, it's almost never like that.
You don't ever get anything to yourself,
especially when you're on them. Like
yep.
I'm not gonna like. I was in practice. It was like I was getting so many bites that I was like, dude, there's gonna be 1 billion people here. Like you never find that many fish there. Like you can win on the Potomac by yourself, but have it be like a grinder. Like I know the right ones are here. I just got to catch 5. But when you're on like a big group of fish, somebody else has found them. But dude, nobody was on my stuff.
Was it windy or something? Like did you have to run a long way in rough water or?
No, it wasn't. I mean, it got the runs back were a little bumpy, but the runs
not
there
bad enough to scare anybody.
What?
It wasn't bad enough to scare anybody, huh?
Wasn't bad enough to make me even think about it.
Yeah,
tell you that.
I mean, that's the only thing I could think of is like, you know, if somebody else found it, but it was like, I'm not gonna go mess with that in 3-footers or 4-footers or whatever.
No,
because I've been out there when it took me 15 minutes to get from freaking Mattawoman to Chickamuxon.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, is this ever gonna end?
Yeah, I've had some bad ones there. That college national championship that was there. Me and my partner were in the top 10 after the first day. That was the only
one I missed.
We were the top 10 after the first day, and all our fish were down in Aquai. And day 2, come out of Mattawoman, hook a left, and I didn't make it 50 yards before I completely filled the boat with water.
Yep.
But it definitely was not that situation. Like I said, on the way back, it was like a little bumpy, but it wasn't like, I mean, I was still going 40 miles an hour, you know, like wasn't anything crazy. But then the point of what I was saying is the second day, all of a sudden there's people. All upon
the same boats that just drove past you.
Well, I wish Zub was here to tell his side of the story. On day 2, Zub's co-angler hops on the boat, and he goes, "Oh, that's your buddy, right? Who caught him yesterday?" And he was like, "Yeah." And the guy goes, "Oh, yellow and gray Skeeter, right?" And Zub goes, "Yeah." And then he spits out the spot I'm fishing. And Zub goes, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, there was a guy at weigh-in yesterday telling everybody that he ran past you. He told like 15 people where you were fishing."
Jesus Christ. That's
some guy just walking around weighing, telling everybody where I'm fishing.
Why wouldn't he want to keep that to himself so he could go there?
I have no idea.
If he was going to do that, he might as well have just gone and not told anybody.
And I mean, I don't think, I'm sure every boat that happened to be near me wasn't because they heard some guy to weigh in. I'm sure some people who had bad day ones were like, "Oh, let's just try something different to go down." Because it's not like it was like a top secret spot either. Like I was shocked there was nobody there. It's not like a community hole or anything, but it was in a major creek. You know, you know where I was.
Yeah.
But it was like, dude, in practice, there were boats around me. Like I was shaking fish off every cast. Like I was throwing baits with just a hitchhiker on it, so I could just pull it out.
Yeah.
And I'm shaking fish off, and I'm looking around. There's a boat 50 yards behind me. There's a boat 50 yards in front of me. There's a boat over. There are boats all over the place in practice, and I'm like, shit, man, I'm getting so many bites. Like every single one of these guys are gonna find these fish, and nobody was there.
That's crazy.
I've never experienced anything like that, especially on a place like the Potomac.
Yeah, Potomac's cool. I mean, the weird thing about the Potomac that I had to get over was like you've got to be willing to fish around people.
Yeah,
and I hate that. Like it got me in my first tournament of the year this year. I just tried to stay away from people, and I burned 36 gallons of gas on the smallest lake we have tournaments on it, like just burning around trying to find something and wading one fish instead of just going in the area where the healthy population was and pinging a minnow with the rest of them. Like,
yeah, it's especially, I don't know, dude, there's something about, and I don't know if this is that rain you were talking about just started for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is something just with me, but like I'm more inclined to be willing to fish in a crowd, like in some grass, than I am to be pinging a minnow with a bunch of people around me.
Yeah.
There's something about that just bothers me more. I don't know. I think it's just because like we can all see the same fish and we're like chasing after them. You know what I mean? In a grass bed, you can kind of just weave around, keep a little bit of distance, find your clump, keep it to yourself, you know. But like sometimes when you're out there pinging the minnow, you can see the guy next to you looking at the same fish as you. And it's like, dude, this is brutal.
Have you heard the story of that dude at the Open that was coming around the corner and saw the 8-pounder that Easton caught at Eufaula on his scope as Easton's bait was falling down to it?
No.
Yeah. I forget what podcast I was listening to, but he was like, yeah, I came around the corner of that point, and Easton was there, and I see this giant dot, and I see a bait falling down to it. I look up to it. It's Easton, and he hooks up.
Oh, my God.
This wasn't in the Classic. This was at the Open.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, like
especially a tournament like that was tough.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that. I don't know. The Potomac was weird. Like the first time I did well there, I was flipping around on some wood, and I was in like a creek, right? Like there was boats kind of everywhere, but everybody was kind of fishing the grass or like they call them like where all the damn snakehead live, like the pads, but they're not really pads, like whatever they are. Like mother-in-law tongues or whatever.
The weird like triangle kind of spear guys.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys were fishing that stuff. It was kind of higher water. I mean, we went to whacking on them, and magically everybody came over to our side of the creek.
Yeah,
it's just like
funny how it happens.
Stuff irks me, but then the more you fish up there, you kind of just get numb to it.
It's one of those things where I'm kind of used to fishing the bay where like sometimes it's even way worse.
Is it really?
Oh yeah. When I mean
crazy.
I mean like when it's prime like flat season and everybody's up on the flat. I mean, like take a tournament like the Ike tournament,
How many
right?
boats is that?
At least 150 every year.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of boats on that place.
Yeah.
And it
And
goes out of Northeast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I usually try to launch somewhere else and drive over.
I bet. Well, I mean, what do you launch over at like Harvard to Grace?
I launched at Charlestown this year. We stayed at like an Airbnb like right next to the ramp there.
Is that? I'm
That's
trying
the
to
big
remember.
marina on the left when you're coming back in.
Oh, okay. So it's like actually one of those marinas.
There's like a little ramp on the side of it, like
Gotcha.
just outside of the seawall there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's only like a 30-second drive over there from that. I wouldn't want to launch it all the way at Harvard to Grace in the dark, but there's a couple ramps over there. I know some guys launch in the back of that other marina on the other side, but I've never launched in there. But anyway, like there's a spot on the flat like where there's like a big ditch that everybody knows about, and 2 years in a row at the Ike tournament, there's been 50 plus boats on it. Like, and I'm talking about a spot that's like 200-300 yards.
And everybody's just power pulled down.
Not some people are power pulled down, some people are weaving in and out of each other. I mean, like, dude, like I fished not on that spot, but another spot on the flat. It was an early spring tournament, like a little later than now, but it was like first grass starting to pop up. And there's one spot that seems to always be the first grass, and people know about it. And when I was there, it was the only spot that I found that had good grass and fish in it.
Yeah.
And I knew there was going to be company. It was a Bass Nation tournament, but I was like in the first 10 boats, I think. And I got out there and I start fishing, and then just vroom, 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 vroom. There was probably 40 boats within 100 yards of me.
Golly. That's how the beaches at the mouth of El Quaya get.
It used to be even worse when they were like good.
Yeah, but like they get grass early a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it'll be on the outside of it. One time I saw like 25 boats on the outside bank, and I was like, what?
I mean, I've fished in the Chick when there's been 50 boats in there.
Oh yeah. The craziest one I've seen was there was the BFL I zeroed out there the first tournament I fished up there. There was
that one.
There was a clump of grass in the back of it's the one that's got the trestle running over it.
There's a few, but you're probably talking about the one straight across from Mattawoman.
It's like it's down and across a little bit. But
it's
yeah,
like
basically
a little south. And
yeah.
across. Why am I blanking on the name? Quantico?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Quantico.
It's got the paper mill in the mouth of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was like one clump of grass in the back there. And I roll in there, and I was actually fishing like this rock near the bridge.
Okay.
And I look back there, and I legitimately think there were 25 boats power pulled down in a circle casting in this grass clump. My buddy said he was in that group at one point, and he said he was just like, I could have casted and caught somebody else's line at almost any time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, that's the part of grass fishing that, like, even today I can't make myself do.
On the bay, there's multiple times. Probably if I'm moving around, at least one time in the day, I will be fishing in a spot where I could cast into somebody's boat.
That's awesome. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. It is different. Like, it's nobody being an asshole normally. It just kind of is what it is.
It's one of those things where it's like, dude, some of the stuff that goes on the bay, if it had like if I was fishing on like Champlain
Mm-hmm.
and somebody pulled up on me like that, it
Oh
would
yeah,
be like a yelling and screaming match of epic proportions. But
yeah.
on the bay, it's just like that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it on the like there's different levels to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a place like Champlain where there's fish everywhere and it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like don't get close to anybody.
There's no need to.
Yeah, like just don't do it. Go fish somewhere else. And then it's like there's certain places where the tolerance is like more and more. Like honestly, to me, there's even a difference between the Potomac and the Bay. Like
Really?
there's a level of close that I'll tolerate at the Bay that I won't at the Potomac.
Huh.
Just because, like, I don't know. It's just how it is. Like you fish close to people at the Potomac, but the way you fish close to people on the Bay is a different animal, dude. Like really close.
The only times I've been up there was for those couple of college tournaments, and there wasn't. The one was in the fall, and it was just awful. When we stayed at your buddy's house.
Yeah, I was
When
I was
every single boat that stayed there made the top 10.
yeah, that was awesome. That's one of the best pictures of all time.
That was electric.
that was so sick to especially like with
Remember
like
the scales were like 2 pounds heavy that day, and he came out to the group at the end and was like, "Yo, we weighed everybody equally. Do you want us to adjust them afterwards?" And we were like, "Hell no, make us look better."
bro, there's a video of me from that weigh-in where like I think Zub took it. I put my bag on the thing and Kevin says, I forget what he says, like 14, 15 pounds, whatever it was. And I go, like, I was like, what? Like,
You thought you were about to get weights and fished.
You could see it on my face. I'm like, what was that? Dude, I got down and I was talking to Zach behind the trailer. And I was like, dude, when the weigh-in's over, I think I got to go up to Kevin and like tell him like,
yeah, like that was way off.
That something was wrong. And then like 2 people after me, a guy weighs in 1 fish.
I remember this exact fish. Yep.
And Kevin's like 7 pounds. And
yeah, it was like a
the kid pulls it out of the bag and he's like, I'm like, that can't be. I was like, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's what's happening.
We rolled up. My Rapala scale said we had like 699 or something, and we had like 10.2 when we weighed in, and we were like, "What?"
Yeah, we had like 14, and my scale had like I think 11.
Yeah,
something like that.
It was even for everybody. It was just funny.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a miserable tournament.
But that's one of the things where like in those college tournaments, like all the local guys kind of know the spots on the flat where it's going down.
Yeah.
In those college tournaments, like they didn't know.
No.
So nobody was fishing out. Well, first of all, in the first one, the one that was in May,
there was no grass out there.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know.
I started to figure out the bay after that. That was only the second time I had ever been down there.
That tournament was also in like May. Like I was catching betters.
Yeah. I was definitely, I mean, like I wasn't seeing them, but I knew.
Oh yeah, they'd pick up your bait and move it. Yeah, it's very rare to see.
I knew they were there. And I had a really good tournament at that, but I did it, not on the flat.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Whereas nowadays in May, you won't catch me making a cast not on that flat.
Yeah, that's just where it's going to be won.
Yeah, it's just something you got to accept, and it's like it's honestly like 30% of the field is going to be guys who refuse to fish on the flat because of the proximity to other people, and because of that, when the tournament starts, you could take 30% of the field out of contention, pretty much. I mean, there's a few like
the other ways to catch them.
The caveat I was going to say to that is there's a handful of like the guys out there
Mm-hmm.
that have stuff and have sneaky stuff, but usually that's gonna be like a okay, I'm gonna get my limit on the flat, and then I have a way to catch one or two really big ones. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, guys aren't, at least
Living
in
on
my understanding. I'm sure there's guys out there doing it that I
They're
don't
laughing at
know.
this probably.
Yeah, but from my understanding and the guys that I know is like, especially when it's that time of year. I mean, right now, obviously you're not winning it on the flat.
Yeah.
And you can get lucky. I mean, there's enough fish that live in the Northeast River that somebody on any given day can win in the Northeast River. I'm not saying it's not happening.
Yeah.
I just don't think
Wasn't
it's
that
consistent.
fall tournament one in the Northeast?
The Open,
No, the one
our
the
college
college
tournament,
one. Yeah.
I don't remember who won that.
It was Adrian, I think.
Adrian, I know Adrian won the one in the spring, and they won it on the flat.
No, I think they won it. One of them said, I vividly remember one of the, because they had like 2 or 3 of the top teams. I can't remember. They said they were throwing a square bill on rock, and I was like, that has to be in Northeast.
Yeah, I mean, in the fall, I would expect it to probably, like, right now, I would expect it to be one in the Northeast. Late into the fall, I would expect it to be one into the Northeast. I mean, I was in that fall tournament. I was fishing on the flat, but
Gotcha.
me and Brennan were, I think, the only 2 boats
Yeah.
out there. And Brennan was out there because I said, hey, we need to get you into the national championship. Follow me on our way out. And we literally fished like touching boats that day.
That's awesome.
We we were just sitting there playing music, hanging out, bullshitting. Like we sat right next to each other all day. Towards the end of the day, we both made a run up into the Northeast to try to do some culling. But
Yeah.
the whole morning we sat there literally like I could have stepped on his boat and he could have stepped on mine.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fun one, but it was honestly one that I thought we had completely blown because the weights were, I mean, the weights are always way tougher there in the fall, but I didn't expect it to be that tough. Like, I thought we totally blown it. Like, Zach lost like a 3.5 pounder right next to the boat, and I popped one off that I didn't see, but it definitely would have helped early in the morning. And I thought we had completely blown that tournament. I was like, we're gonna be nowhere near it. And then
y'all top 5'd it, didn't you?
No, I think we came in 7th.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually. Oh no, we came in 8th actually.
Oh wow. Yeah, we got 10th.
Yeah. But I mean, we top 10'd every single tournament that year.
Yeah, y'all went on a run.
Yeah, that was the year that I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing, you know. That's the year that forced me into a lifetime of this.
Pretty fun. Yeah, I mean, college fishing definitely, not only like did it make me more addicted to fishing and spend my every weekend doing it, but it also, like, without the lessons that I learned from being the president of the club and working with companies, and I mean, I got an internship from people that I met, not even in the fishing industry.
Yeah.
And then now, like, I would say that the job that I have today is because I enjoyed the sales aspect of working for my sponsors in college. So, like, college fishing it's done a lot for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even fish at a high level. I just kind of like to fish.
I mean, even like the smaller things, like this right now, like, oh yeah, I'm talking to my buddy Blake from Virginia. How do you know a guy from Virginia? It's like, you know, it's like I got buddies that I talk to all the time from all around the country that I never would have even ran into if it wasn't for college fishing.
Yeah, I mean, I've stayed in houses, like shared houses with guys from Murray State, from Youngstown State, from Ramapo, from Penn State, like everywhere. Like,
yeah.
They're Virginia Tech, Radford. I mean, like, now those are local schools, so it makes a little bit more sense. But like, you meet a lot of people, and it's cool.
And I mean, even like, you know, the guys I was on the team with are still like my best friends today.
Yep, I'd say
Like,
half my groomsmen were on the fishing team with me.
yeah, like there's a different level of like being friends, and I think a big important part of it is like maintaining friends when you do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, we're gonna go fishing this weekend, and like just because we graduated college, that didn't stop.
Nope. It actually got worse.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
didn't have access to bars and frats every weekend.
Yeah. It's I actually got up on time and
Yeah.
got out to the lake before
Now, do we still
noon.
try to drink like we're in college? Yeah.
Yeah,
But does it hurt a lot more? Oh yeah.
yeah. I've been having some problems with it lately. I gotta fishing season has started. You go through cycles of like
Yeah.
in the middle of the winter down here, like when shit is fully frozen and I can't bring the boat out. Like, I'll still go ice fishing and stuff, but like I'm not concerned about being banged up when I'm ice fishing. It being banged up when you're trying to fish a tournament is a problem.
Absolutely.
So I get into a cycle of like getting used to going out and staying out late in the middle of the winter, and then this time rolls around, I'm like, all right, I gotta stop doing this for a few months.
Yeah. Are y'all's tournaments starting to ramp up? Because like we're wide open now.
I fished my first one not this weekend that just passed, but the weekend before.
Okay.
And
Was that
then
down like the bay or something?
no, it was on the river, Delaware River.
Okay. So that probably thaws out faster because of the current.
Yeah. I mean, we've we haven't had ice for a few weeks now, but like I went fishing on a lake in the northern part of the state on Saturday, and my water temperature was still 42 to 44. I went fishing today at a small lake by my house, and the water was like 50, but it's like a 7-foot mud pit, so it's always the warmest by far. But like the big lakes around here are still pretty cold.
Yeah. We had actually had ice this year. Nothing that you could ice fish on, but we
Yeah.
had ice. Like you couldn't launch your boat at a lot of lakes around here.
Yeah, we had like
Y'all had
fish.
ice.
We had like fishable ice for like over 2 months.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember a couple of years ago, like y'all couldn't get out on the ice the whole year.
Last year we had like 1 week of ice,
Yeah.
and 2 years ago we had like 2 weeks of ice. Like I remember having the conversations with everybody that was like, is ice fishing just over now? Like, is it just too consistent? Like, no. The answer is no. It's back. We just had a couple of warm winters. But yeah, and honestly, like, I don't know how you feel about it. For us, it's like it's brutal, but it seems like the worse the winter is, the better the spring is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think so my theory, I have a theory on this. So
Okay, I have a couple too, so I'm interested to hear what you got to say.
I think that when you have this early warm weather, especially us, like we're in the transition zone. Like we can grow like around here. You can have northern grasses and southern grasses in the same neighborhood, and you can have it. Like you can have whatever you want because we're kind of in that area where nothing grows well because we have weird temperatures. So when you have that super early warmth, like last year we had fish on beds. Granted, it was at a power plant lake, but like we had fish on beds in January last year at the power plant lake. And in March last year, my buddy caught a 7 off of a bed on Smith Mountain. But then the cold temperature drops. So like these fish, I think they spread out. You get some that stay out on the bait, some that flood the banks, and then it just kind of makes the fishing tough overall. Where I think when you have this hard cold to where it broke, and we haven't really, I mean, we've had cold nights, but it's been consistently warming for like 2 or 3 weeks now. I think that makes for like, I think the spawn's going to start like Saturday, and I think it's going to be hot and heavy for like 3 or 4 weeks where like they're going to be on the bed and they're going to be getting after it. And I mean, we had the biggest weights I can remember in Virginia in the pre-spawn time. winning tournaments. I don't know if that's live scope, but I live scope's been around long enough to where it's not just that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, have you been seeing like down in, Alabama and that general area, they're handing out 30-pound bags like they're Halloween candy bars right now. Like,
what was that Gunnersville tournament where like 30 pounds got you 14th?
Dude,
this winter?
Dude, it's been insane. I mean, there was the Toyota series on Pickwick that had multiple 30-pound. I mean, when have you ever heard of 32 pounds on Pickwick? I've never heard of that.
No, I mean, so we had 37 on Smith Mountain without a 10.
That's so ridiculous.
That's dumb. Dude. On Anna, which is a smaller lake up here,
yeah,
it took over 30 to win like 5 or 6 of the 10 Winter Series tournaments, and if it didn't take 30, it took 27 to 29.
Been hearing a lot of buzz about that place for the past year or two.
That place would make an awesome skating rink. I mean, freaking drain it and fill it with concrete. I hope the nuclear plant blows up.
Like, it seems like quite a polarizing place. They either love it or they hate it.
So they either ping a minnow or they don't. Like, that place blows, dude. There's no structure. The only thing in there, well, there is structure because everybody sinks brush piles in there. There's a ton of brush piles in there, but like, there's no natural banks. It's all developed. It's a completely dredged lake, so there's a ton of silt everywhere. Like, it's so fun to go sight fishing there. But its fish is super small. It's because it's not a big lake, and like we had big rain and snow melt this year, so like you got up a little bit up the lake, and it was not even an inch of visibility in 39 degrees. Like, and it's not like the mud that's been there a while. It's like that fresh orange mud.
Kind of like when we were in Grand Lake.
Yeah, exactly like that. Where like one area is good, right?
Yep.
And so it just condenses everybody. Like, I've had so much fun fishing out there, just fun fishing or practicing. Like the day before that tournament that we kicked off the year there this year, I could have had, I think everybody, if the tournament was Friday instead of Saturday, I think it would have taken 22 to get paid. But then they just shut down on Saturday because there was no wind and there was a billion boats out there hitting each other in the head. It was weird.
That also reminds me of our senior year Smith Mountain tournament when they put it on a Sunday and they stopped pulling water. And
that was like a summertime tournament.
Yeah, that was the COVID year when they had to push it back.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I was on like the most epic shad spawn of my life the 2 days prior.
Really?
And then the day of the tournament, it just didn't happen.
I mean,
we still caught them.
That was a tournament I fished with Daniel. So we ran all over the place in that tournament. And yes, we were on a great shad spawn in the morning, and we roll in there, there's a local boat sitting on it. And luckily they went, but like they were hooked up, doubled up when we pulled up.
Wow.
And luckily they went, y'all are in that tournament? I was like, yeah. And they were like, you got it. We're just fun fishing. I was like, oh, hell yeah. I had a 5-pounder just destroy my spook and send it flying 10 feet in the air. And then the shad spawn stopped. We got one bite there. After that, it was like 1.5 pounds, and then kind of just ran all over the lake, junk fishing the rest of the day.
That tournament was one of the worst days of my life, but we'll get into why. But 2 days before the tournament is when I discovered that there was like this shad spawn going on, because I came on this like around on this like riprap point, and the water was boiling like it was stripers, and I threw into it and caught one immediately. So then that night I went on Google Maps and I waypointed 13 spots that I thought would be good like shad spawn type of areas. And I got up like in the dark the next morning, and the second there was light, went out. And dude, I hit all 13 of those spots that morning, 13 spots in a row, I only made one cast because 13 spots in a row, I caught a fish on my first cast.
That's pretty crazy.
It was absolute. The first cast of my morning, I threw a spook out there and caught a 626.
Wow. Yeah, we didn't find it that good.
Bro, and I was like, dude, we are gonna crush them tomorrow.
Yeah, that was a weird
Pulled
one.
up the next morning, it was not happening.
I want to say there was like no clouds at that tournament either. Like I want to say it was bright sun and we had clouds a lot of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, there was definitely some hot days out there because I remember getting cooked by the sun. But yeah, I mean that was another. It seems like that happens more often than not. Like I guarantee you, they'll just be chewing on Friday this week, and then Saturday it'll be tough. Like with 200 boats out there, it'll be tough again. Like that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, imagine fishing the opens all the time. That would suck. Everywhere you go just sucks because there's 230 boats.
I'm doing them next year.
Are you?
I am.
Which division? Well, I guess you don't know.
Yeah, once we'll see what is closer, you know.
They'll change the format again.
I'm sure they will. I would love for them to change it back to, you know, what it was. That would be cool.
9?
No, 3.
Oh, the 3, yeah. 4 is not.
I definitely don't want the 9.
Well, it's 4 and then 3. Like, right? You got to do 4.
Now it is, yeah. Well, the year I was gonna start fishing the opens is the year they changed to that all 9 format, and I was like, well, I can't do this now.
Yeah.
Like, I had saved my money for a whole year and a half to be able to do 3, and I was all excited for it. And then I was like, all right, well, guess not.
Yeah.
And then when it was at that 9 tournament format, I was just like, I guess I'm just never going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And then now that they switched back to the 4 tournament format, I was like, well, like, I could maybe do this. I would have done it this year if I had like known they were switching it back and had time to like put money aside for it.
Yeah.
So now this year I'm putting money aside for it, and I'm going to try to do it next year. Really ticks me off because this year there's one on the bay.
Oh, there is, yeah.
Which would have been nice to fish. I thought about just jumping in it as like a one-off just to see if I could win. But
is it in a division that's not full?
I mean, most of the opens right now are not full field. You can get into pretty much any of them.
The one division I thought was full, and the other one is not. The one division's like very much not, and then the other one had like 230 boats at the first one.
Yeah, I don't know what I mean, they used to cap it at 250, and I haven't seen one with 250 yet. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they have a lower limit now or what, but I know you can still get into the bay one. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But
I honestly have stopped keeping up with the opens as much. Just been really busy. Like I keep up with the tournament when it's going on. Like I know they're about to start at Norfolk, but I don't remember what divisions or what and all that this year.
I'm like the opposite. I know the format because I studied it when it came out, but I couldn't tell you who's winning them.
Yeah. Hard to keep up with it.
Especially when, like, you know, we're doing this podcast now, so we're trying our best to, like, actually keep up with, like, the pro side of things, which, like, between the Elite Series, obviously, which you, like, pay the most attention to, and then MLF and the NPFL, like, I'm like, on just that portion of it, I'm like, this is a lot of tournaments to pay attention to, dude, you know, like.
Yeah, and then, like, I've got to spend time every week because I'm putting on a tournament this year. It's like a tournament of champions, so I've got to go and, like, figure out who qualified for it every weekend, and, like, sometimes the results aren't up for, like, 2 weeks, so, like, that's time that probably would have been spent aimlessly scrolling and seeing, you know, things on social media that are now spent researching stuff. So it's like
I saw that actually, and I was upset about it and wished you started it a year earlier so that I would have been qualified for it.
Oh, when you won on the Potomac?
Yeah.
Come win down there again this year.
I'm probably gonna show up and fish the one in the fall again. Not saying
house and fish the James.
And not saying I'm gonna win it, but I'm probably gonna show up. When's the James one?
I don't know. There's always tournaments on the James.
Yeah, true. I've never been to that's the only place in like of all those systems that I've never fished the James once. I know
I'm
that's
very
the
biased, but I
most
truly
experience.
believe it's the most fun.
Really. See, and here's the thing, you're not the only one I've heard that from. I doubt it will be possible to get me to like a fishery more than I like the Potomac, but I've heard a lot of people say that it's really you're one of two people. You're either a Potomac person or a James person. Everybody has a favoring towards one or the other.
They're so different too. Like, and I think that's what like people that don't know tidal fisheries, like I'd say the Bay and the Potomac are very similar.
They
Like it's
can be.
grass, they can't like they kind of set up similarly. It's very wide, very shallow. The channels aren't well marked. Like it's like, but it's also not that sketchy because you can kind of just run anywhere. Like, but there is sketchiness, like where like the James is super sketchy and there's sandbars and like the channel is well marked. If you stay in the channel, it's fine, and you get big tide swings and heavy current. Like you can get 3 to 5 mile an hour current in some places. Like you can fish feeder. I mean, you can kind of fish. You can fish grass. You can fish pads. Like that's what I think. It's more dynamic than those two.
Yeah.
So like, and granted, I've spent a ton of time here, so some people would say no, it's always one this way. But like, you've got ponds, we call them pits off of the river that like literally fish like a pond that goes up and down in water level. There's no current in them. And then you've got current in the mouth of them. I love that you can go and do different things there. And I've kind of got a few things that I do that I think are a little different, which definitely helps me like it. But the funny thing is I say all that, but I've made more money on the Potomac than I have on the James in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, but part of that's because I just don't fish the James nearly as much as I used to. I fish Tuesday nighters and stuff like that, but like fishing the Elite 70, like, I mean, there's only one tournament there a year and then a couple BFLs. And then, normally I'll jump in like a Carolina Angler team trail. They have those on the James a bunch. But
and you also, not totally fair to compare it to the Potomac because you've run into a couple of big events on the Potomac in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I got a third and a first in an Elite 70 there. Like that.
Yeah,
that helps your average a lot.
You made a little bit of money out there.
Yeah, definitely helped. My average finish there is way higher, but that's also a much smaller sample size.
Yeah. I mean, the way you were talking about the James it sounds a little closer to like what the Delaware is here.
I've heard that.
I don't think it's all the way to the Delaware because the Delaware has a 6-foot tide swing.
Yeah, we're like 3 or 4.
But it is similar in the way of like there's a lot of sketchiness running up the creeks, sandbars sticking out of nowhere. Like, there's a lot of like what you talked about, little ponds off the river that turn into like, like there's like 4 or 5 like big community hole ponds, that everybody knows about, does circles in. The only difference
when they get on bed and around the bed, like those ponds become a huge player. I assume they do up there too because there's no current.
Well, where it really becomes a player is anytime it's on the colder half of the year because there's so much current that there's only so many places that they can winter in. To whereas like in the summer, you can catch them all up and down the main river, like in the teeth of the current. They'll be hiding behind little things, little eddy. Like you can catch them in downtown Philadelphia.
That's
like
so fun.
Right up against the shipping piers, like in the middle of the main Delaware River channel in 6-foot tide current. Like they'll be out there in August.
That's so
but
cool.
They definitely ain't going to be out there in November through now.
Yeah. No, we have the same thing. I mean, like it's not as like you can get bit on the main river, but you're in current breaks and things like that. Like it's not
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, we have the same thing in the summer. Like sometimes the best spots are the ones where you're spot locking on 9 or 10. Like it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I thoroughly enjoy current fishing. Like that's like I try to find current deals even on the Potomac, and it
Yep.
never works out. But but like I've tried so many times. I'm like, oh, the current's ripping through here. I'm about to blast them, and I catch one for 14 inches. And
It does happen on the Potomac. I've had a couple, but it is, it's not as much as like a real river system as
the
some
only
other
part of the
places. So,
Potomac that is similar to the James to me is when you get up around DC, just because it is so hairy up there, and
yeah,
there's no grass.
I don't like fishing up there. I never have a good time up there.
I got my boat stuck on a sandbar in the Anacostia, and there was a sign next to where I got stuck saying "Don't swim because there's poop in the water." And I was like, "You got
Oh
to
my
be
god.
kidding me!" But I'm sure I had open cuts all over me, and just got in and pushed my boat off. And I think I showered in bleach that night.
Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, that I mean, the James to me like is it's definitely special to me because it's where I learned how to fish. But like I just even when watching tournaments, like they had the tackle warehouse here, the BPT here was a waste of time to watch because it's every fish counts. So
Yeah.
they were just going to the places with the biggest populations of 1.5 pounders and casting on with a spinning rod. Like it was cool to see what they can do. Like because I never fished that way, and they can freaking catch them. But it doesn't have the excitement. Like there was very few guys. Like Poche smashed him the first day, and nobody talked about it. He
Mhm.
had 5 for like 32, and nobody talked about it because
I hate that.
he was in like fourth.
That's why I hate that every fish counts format, because it's like, dude, nobody else does that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't even know what I'm watching really.
There's been a few
Like
really cool ones though. Like, granted, I
there.
don't follow it nearly as much, but like that first year on Sharon Harris in North Carolina when
Mhm.
Prosnick and Wheeler were going back and forth, that was like the best MLF tournament of all time.
There
And then
there
this year on Harris Chain was awesome,
I watched some of that, yeah.
but for the most part, it sucks. I mean, like it's
They're
just boring.
they're cool to watch, but to me, it seems more like you're just watching like a fun fishing video than watching a tournament.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like it's like everybody across it, like, let's face it, nobody who isn't a bass fisherman is watching tournaments. It's not baseball, it's not football. Like the spectator aspect is from other people who do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the other people who do this do it in a completely different way.
But I will say, if it's on TV and you've got a wife watching with the tournament fisherman husband or whatever it is, or like
Mhm.
I'll leave it on the TV at my family's house all the time. And, my dad and mom will keep watching it after I leave. They don't give a crap about how many 2-pounders somebody caught. They want to see that giant come in the boat and the freak out and the fight,
Yeah.
not put it on the scale and get back in there. Like they don't. That's impressive to us because we're like, wow, like that is a massive school of fish, and we understand how impressive it actually is. But to me, a 5-fish format becomes even more relatable for them. Not the actual math of it, but the like, that's a giant. That one matters.
Yeah. Like even like that's why I know there's been mixed reviews, but in my personal opinion, I thought this year's was like a perfect classic because it was like big fish, but it was a little tougher, and it was like slugfest, but it wasn't. It was like the drama was at max because every hook set was a big deal. Like that's like high stakes classic fishing. Like, and there were different techniques, there were different styles. Like that just felt like the essence of like what dramatic TV style tournament fishing is.
I 100% agree. The only thing I'll say is like, it's clear Bass One has sold more commercials to help with their payout. They're
Yeah,
running way
dude.
more. way more ads, and they're paying out better than they originally came out with. So it kind of is what it is. Like, I don't hate it. There's people online like crying about it. They got to pay their bills. There's a billion commercials during an NFL game too. Like, whatever. Not having Zona has hurt them big time. You made a point. Robbie Floyd's got to go, or not Robbie Floyd. Whatever that other dude's name
Peter
is.
Miller.
Yeah, that dude's got to go.
Dude.
He's awful.
It's insufferable.
Dude, he's sitting there. Oh, well, I sit on my tackle box and I reel him up. Shut up, please. Just stop talking.
Because that's like to the point I made before. Your main audience is not necessarily heavy tournament fishermen, even though I think a majority of that is, but at the very least, they're bass fishermen, right? Mm-hmm. Guys who know what they're talking about. I mean, they have a guy commentating the sport that like clearly knows less than like the average fan does.
Yep. So like, I hate, well, not hate, hate's the wrong word, because I love her Twitter page, but Trade Zaldane makes some outlandish comments, right? Her Twitter page is incredible, but like she says some out of pocket stuff, right? So, but the best thing she said is like, it worked for MLF when they brought in that dude in the suit because he didn't act like he knew anything.
Mm-hmm.
He just asked questions. He commented on the action.
Yeah.
He knew his place.
Yeah.
This guy comes in as I'm Mr. Saltwater, baby. And it's like, oh my God. Like it's not a true disrespect, but it feels disrespectful to the guys that do know what they're talking about. Like Tommy Sanders was that guy for a long time. So you can't have two guys on there that don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Like, to me, they've got to fill that void with Davey Height or with, I mean, whoever it might be, Mark Menendez.
I think that's a nice one.
Like, you know, there's lots of options out there. I'm sure that Ike and Ellie, like, he would never do it.
I threw that out. One of the other episodes is like when he finally stops fishing. Like, I was trying to think of like what's the next closest thing to like a Zona type character where like he's an expert in the sport, but also is like entertaining and charismatic.
Yeah. And
like Ike was really the only one I could come up with.
Yeah. There's plenty of other ones out there, but I just don't think there's any that close to. I don't think there's any that are going to retire and then say, I want to go keep working and fishing for another brand. Like, that's the hard part is like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like, I think Mercer does an awesome job with like the time fills they have him do, but he's the MC. He's the best MC that fishing's ever had. They're not going to pull him out of that. I don't know. They've got to try to do something else though. Like, let Ronnie Moore cook. Like, that dude knows his stuff.
Yeah, but it was also one of those things where I always felt like it just the way he carries himself and speaks, that Ronnie was going to be the appropriate fill for Tommy. Because my assumption would have always been that he was going to go first because he's older than Zona. But now it's like
Zona's not retiring; he's still working. He's just not working for Bass.
Yeah, but it's
when
like
Tommy backs out, he's going to retire.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like I always saw like, okay, Ronnie is in the wings to be the next Tommy. But who's the next? Like, obviously, I would much rather have Davey Height over this Peter Miller guy by a country mile. But while Davey Height does have the expert in the sport aspect, he definitely doesn't have like the charisma that Zona had. I mean, it's really like he's an impossible guy to replace. Like, he had the best blend of everything for that job.
It's like us sitting here and saying, who's the next KVD? Like, there's a few candidates, but you got to do it, right? And this experiment, it just clearly hasn't worked to me.
No.
And I think even a casual fan, like, so I think of some of my customers that bass fish, but they don't tournament fish, I think they would be able to pick up on it too. Like, I don't know. That's what I think.
He's the classic, like, I lived down in Florida and I ran a saltwater charter boat for a year. Like when you enter that world, all the saltwater guys, and I'm sure you know these guys and you've seen it. They have a little bit of like their nose up in the air about bass fishing, like the whole like, oh, you catch fish that I would use for bait, or oh, yeah, try that 100 miles offshore. Yo, why are you using 50-pound braid for a 2-pound bat? You know
You
that,
call that a 2-footer? That ain't no 2-footer.
yeah,
Yeah.
that attitude is like I can feel that in the subconscious of Peter Miller. He's not outright saying it, but he's alluding to it the whole time. And it's like, dude, just get out of here, man. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. He's probably a nice guy, and I'm sure he's great at
Yep.
offshore fishing and
Well,
saltwater fishing and all that stuff.
think
But
about
he's got to
saltwater
hit
fishing, though.
show. He's got to hit show. Just keep doing that.
Think about saltwater fishing, though, and how different it is. Like, you're talking about guys 100 miles offshore. The drama is there because they don't start showing anything unless it's a breakdown, a big waves, a giant fish hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is easy to commentate. Even if you don't know it, look at the size of that bluefin. It's jumping out of the air. Oh my gosh. Like, I could do it. Like,
Yeah.
but am I a subject expert? No. But anyway, I thought the
Bass
classic
fishing
was
is
awesome.
it's more about the details. It's more about the nuance. Like you really gotta know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You
Like, is he
really,
going to pick up on that somebody's throwing a triple willow instead of a willow Colorado, and what the cadence is, and be able to break that down for us? Not that
I
he
mean,
has to, but is he even close to that?
when they were doing the bait breakdown of the Big M that Polinick was throwing on Okeechobee, they had him do the bait breakdown with Ronnie, and it was like very clear that he didn't even know what it was. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were laughing.
yeah.
Like he's like, it's a big plug.
It's like you got all these crankbaits and jerk baits here on the table. It's like if we blended them all up and this came out the other end. And I'm like, well, not really, dude.
Not at all.
But I can say as a guy who's done both, one is significantly easier than the other, but we don't need to go into that.
Yeah. No.
But
I mean, the classic was awesome, right? You had big fish. It reminded me of Jordan Lee's classic, where like the potential was there.
Yeah,
The one
yeah.
on Conroe, the potential was there for the big comeback. Like it was a great classic. A good guy won it. There should not have. There is no drama around him winning. It's just old people complaining. But even that, I don't think is that loud. Like
just Randy Blockett screaming at clouds.
yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's
No.
I thought it was a great event personally.
The only thing that could have made it better is if like I wish there was like a little bit less of a gap after day 2 so that the drama was a little higher. I mean, they wound up creating the drama for us because he couldn't catch a fish for a really long time. But it would have been really ramped up if it was more like, within 3 or 4 pounds than.
But the whole Elite Series season, so like the cool story, or you look at St. John's, it came down to 3 ounces separated the top 3 places. Might have been the top 4 places because there was a tie for third.
Which honestly was like, there was only because Bill Lowen had a really bad day. Like there shouldn't have been drama. He had plenty of a lead.
But that's exactly what was happening to Easton.
Yeah.
And so like both that 8-pounder and that 5-pounder that Lowen punched up, they have the same meaning. I mean, they were those ceiling fish. Like they had the same drama. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then like Polinick's thing was like, it was a different storyline, but it was different and cool for different reasons. Like I think they're off to a great start this year personally. Which
is one of the things I wanted to talk about is I think potentially the coolest tournament is coming up, and it's a place that you're the only person I know who has like fished an event there.
Dude, that place, I have an alpha there in like a month. I cannot wait. It is, it's not TIDAL, first off. So all these people need to stop. It is, really? It has like, it's all, so no, if there is a tide swing, it's like 2 inches. Like
Wow.
So it's all wind tides. So if you get a heavy north wind, it blows all the water out. If you get a heavy south wind, it makes high water. Like
Mhm.
they might not be able to launch at the tournament ramp if they get a heavy north wind because it could blow all the water out. And that I know that ramp, and it's a really short ramp.
Really?
But there's other places they can put in and boat over. But like,
Yeah.
first off, that's going to be a shit show. They're going to be shuttling people over like that. That ramp is not big enough for that. There's auxiliary parking. It's at a little downtown park, but that place is going to be the best storyline of the year because you can legitimately run like, depending on what our forecast is for the alpha, because it's Great Lake size. Like it is
Yeah.
unbelievably large. Like it's at its widest 15 miles across and 150 miles long. You can like I've got spots marks that are 90 miles from the ramp that I'm going to check in practice before that alpha if it's conducive to run.
Yeah.
Like somebody's going to do something dumb there. But then also you're going to have somebody that just starts fishing at the ramp and drops a 30 bag. Like it's the BPT went there last year out of Edenton.
Yep.
And they restricted them at the bridge, which goes across the sound. It's a 12-mile bridge that goes across the sound. And it's the worst bridge of all time. The whole thing's just like, doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. It's so bad, Daniel knocked a tire off his trailer last year going over it. Like it sheared the bolts off.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, like they restricted them to essentially they could fish the Chowan, the Roanoke, and the main sound. There's a couple little creeks and like Salmon Creek that you can go into and stuff like that. But the Roanoke's got big fish in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most of the field was. And then the Chowan is where it was and ended up winning. But they also, their format kind of forced that. They were fishing out on isolated cover. I mean, impressive stuff that I would have never thought to do there. So super impressive. Like, I'm sure guys do it now, especially that they saw what it can do. But like, we didn't see the 10s and 11s and 8s that live in that place when they were there. Because frankly, that place is a topwater madhouse. Like, they're going to go there and they're going to have some betters and stuff. So it'll be a little different. But like, the first time I ever went there was out on the Little River, which is a couple little rivers over from the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my buddy with me and he caught like a 6. And we're like, oh, you got a good chance at big fish. Like it's July or August. Like
Yeah.
it was like a high 6. And we're like, yeah, that'll be close for big fish. And we come in and this girl had 2 8s that she caught on a popper. And one of them was like a high 8. And it was like, it had to be 27 inches long. Like ridiculous. Like these are prehistoric fish in that place. I don't even know if they're Florida strains. Like it's just absurd. So I lived in Virginia Beach for a year and all the clubs and stuff down there, that's the closest major bodies of water. So they're only like an hour to an hour and a half away, all the rivers. So that's where all the tournaments were down there. So I've fished almost every river on that sound at this point, and they're all good.
That was going to be my question. Is this an equal opportunity fishery, or are people going to be? Wow, that's the cool part about it. I mean, that's what I personally love about like the Potomac compared to the Chesapeake. Like Chesapeake, it feels like you can only win in a couple spots. The Potomac, it feels like so much bigger. Like
this is way bigger.
That's so sick.
So like the Alligator is one I haven't fished because it's on the south side. That place has got them, but they've all got them. But some of them got them. Like you can win it in all of them, but like the Tank, the Chowan, the Alligator, the Roanoke, the Yopum. There's a couple others. Perquimans has got a couple places like areas that are pretty good. Like they're all good and they're all big. Like the Tank is big. I think it's going to be one of the coolest fishing tournaments, unless they get big wins or something that screw it all up and force everybody to stay in the Tank, which is very possible there. I think it's going to be one of the most drama-filled. Like remember the 2 or 3 years ago when they went to the St. Lawrence out of Messina, and it was like when Welcher like took that picture and like straight up 10-footers,
Yeah.
and just the drama around that whole tournament. I foresee this one being like, holy shit, John Cox is 90 miles away in a canal sight fishing, and Matt Airy is looking at the boat ramp catching them on a buzzbait. Like it. Have you ever heard of Kitty Hawk?
Yeah, I've been to Kitty Hawk.
You can catch bass in Kitty Hawk.
I know. That's how I found out about this place, because I was on a family vacation years ago in Kitty Hawk, and we had a house right on the bay with a long dock on it, and I was looking up like what I could fish for, and I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah. There's a couple canal systems over there that are pretty decent. And like, it would not shock me if we saw a GPS tracker during the coverage in those canals over there.
Well, that's the thing I was gonna ask, and you kind of answered it when you were talking about the like Virginia clubs and stuff, but like one of the first ever Bassmaster Classics was out of the Albemarle Sound.
No, it was on the Currituck Sound.
Oh, well, which is
It's the next
a little
sound
further
over.
up, right?
Yeah, it's through a canal. You can get like they can run to it unless they restrict them. They can run to it, which I don't think bass will restrict them.
I'm sure they won't, because I mean, you've seen the stuff they allow on the Sabine and on Winyah Bay. I mean,
The only thing I can think is no, because they let them run through the Charleston Harbor on Winyah. So
yeah, they
were
were
like a legal thing, maybe, but
remember that shot of I think it might have been Zaldane who was running next to a pack of dolphins.
oh, we get that on the James all the time, though.
I've never seen. I mean,
Oh, dude, last year I was fishing. I was running 10 miles from my house, and there was like 2 or 3 dolphins coming up. My kill switch pulled, and I was sitting there trying to figure out why my motor shut off. And I was like, hold on, is that a fucking dolphin? And it's like 2 or 3 dolphins swimming by, but they were all in the Chickahominy last year on the James, like all the way up at the dam.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're everywhere out there. I mean, last year in particular, they were really thick.
That's crazy.
I mean, we've had manatees multiple times up around my house. Like the ramp that's closest to my house, there was a manatee up there when I was in high school. And then last year or the year before, my buddy saw one out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was used to that stuff when I was in Florida, but not
Virginia.
I didn't expect that over there.
That's super rare, right? You're talking twice in
I'd imagine.
Years, but
yeah, but still, the fact that it's even possible is surprising to me.
We get like the jackal drift crab. I'm like, can't wait to throw that this year, because like we get blue crab. I catch blue crabs or catch them in my live well all the time. Let's see if I have a picture of my live well. But
oh yeah, you get some of that on the bay. I remember actually in that college tournament we were talking about in the fall, that spot on the flat that I was fishing, it was like surrounded by a wall of hydrilla, so the middle of it was like crystal clear. And I remember in practice just like looking down with my eyes and being like, at the same time, I saw a blue crab, a common carp, a channel cat, a striper, and a largemouth bass, all within my eyesight at the same time.
No way.
Yep.
That happened to me on the upper or one of those rivers down there on the Albemarle. I skipped a chatterbait up under a dock, and one of those like where you turn the reel handle over and they're on it.
Yeah.
And like a 35-inch striper jumped out of the water under a dock, like a sea run striper. I was just like, what?
That was like in the St. Lucie River where we used to fish.
Yeah.
We would snook fish up there under the mangroves.
Okay.
And it would be like snook, jack, snapper, snook, 7-pound largemouth.
That's ridiculous.
It was like, what?
That was in my live well last year on the James.
Wow.
Missed a check by 2 ounces, but
No. There it is. There's a check sitting right there.
no, yeah, and I was not fishing downriver at all. Like that's what people like. We were catching my Daniel caught a redfish on the Chowan last year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff goes further up than people think. I mean, the Upper Bay, like up where the flat is and where we're that's like 100% fresh water by the time you get
Mm-hmm.
all the way that high. And I mean, you guys catch stripers off the flat. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you,
They
you
catch sea
catch.
run striper up there.
Oh yeah, you get there are blue crabs everywhere. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if it connects, they'll get there.
And bass do the same thing though. Like I've caught bass just going, I'm gonna try this, and you get down there and it smells salty, and you're like, it's probably ain't gonna work. And you catch some, and you're like,
Well, that's like, dude, have you ever looked at the map of like the Louisiana Delta where they used to have classics at?
where they run down to Venice.
Dude, it's in the middle of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea how bass live there.
Dude, I remember the first time I looked that up. I'm like, there's no way this is the place. There's no way that they're there. But
They are.
they are. I
I
mean,
guess the grass filters the salt out. Like,
yeah, I guess that's what happens. But like, I think about a place like Louisiana, and it's like one bad hurricane, isn't everything dead in there?
so Back Bay is like off the Currituck Sound where they had that classic. And I don't know if you've ever watched the Lynn Dollar from that classic of the Currituck Sound. You know that YouTube channel, Lynn Dollar?
No, I don't.
Dude, it is, if you're a bass fishing nerd watching this or it is the best thing ever. It's all the old FLW and
How is
Bassmaster
that spelled?
LYNN dollar.
All right, I'm gonna have to look at that.
Like, you name a tournament from the 90s, 80s, like the Block It Sinking His Boat tournaments on there. Like, it is every bass fishing nerd's dream. Like, so you can watch that Currituck Sound TV show, and they're talking about how full of grass it is and this and that. Well, that was so Back Bay is kind of like Virginia Beach's Sound, right?
Uh-huh.
So like when I lived down there, like you could just walk over to Back Bay, like or drive or whatever. Like that's where people went kayaking and paddleboarding.
Yeah.
And Back Bay is very shallow though, like very shallow. It's one of the sketchiest bodies of water I can think of because there's old duck blinds everywhere. The wind moves the water up and down. Like it's probably 5-6 foot deep at its deepest. But it was full of grass back then, and they were smashing them because of it.
Yeah.
Well, then at that time there was like a small like opening in Back Bay where salt water would go in and out, and they actually closed that off to like, I guess, I don't know, probably to build a road, but
yeah.
they closed it off for some reason, and all the grass died and the fishing got terrible. And then it broke through during a hurricane, and they never fixed it. They said, well, nature did it, whatever. They never did fixed it. And so now there's a little bit of saltwater intrusion in there, and the grass came back and the fishing got better. So it's something about the salt that helps the grass, which then provides the forage for the bass. I don't know. Zub's a scientist. He'd be able to tell us if he wasn't being a bum, but
Yeah, I'm sure it's got something to do with like flow, allowing the water to not get stuck up there, and moving back and forth. If I were to guess, I mean, I have no
idea. It's not much, like from what I've been told, and I've never been over there. I don't know, but like from what I've been told, it's not like you can taste the salt water or anything. It's just salt water gets in there. But you're a long way, like Oregon Inlet down there on the Outer Banks is a long way from where they're fishing that Elite Series tournament.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and
that's what
all that water has to go out of. So that's why there's not really tides where they're fishing.
Well, that's what you don't realize is like looking at it on a map. And I never thought of this before, like I said, when I was down there on vacation looking it up. But looking at it on a map, like you're just like just really quick, you're like, oh, that's salt water. Yep. But then when you actually are like, okay, where does the water come in? It's like, oh, no water comes in anywhere over here.
Yep.
Like It's basically like going all the way up the Chesapeake. It's just less obvious because the strip of land is so small going
Mhm.
down it. It looks like all the bays in New Jersey, but the bays in New Jersey have an inlet every 10 miles.
Yep. No,
You know?
100%. And, like, you get down around Oregon Inlet, and it's all salt, right? But, like, the alligator where I was talking about isn't that far from Oregon Inlet, but it's far enough to where the think about how much water that is. I just said it's just the
Yeah.
Albemarle is 150 by 15 miles. If not, I could be off. It could be 200 miles long. I have no earthly idea. Um, but like that is a massive amount of water to move in and out of an inlet that is very small. So
Yeah.
like I've heard Oregon Inlet is the sketchiest place that saltwater guys period run a boat because the sandbars move and the government apparently has to move the channel markers at least once a week, and if a storm comes, more than that because like the sandbars just move around because it's so much current, and like if you get a big storm, it just changes. I mean, it's crazy. Like it. So that strip that all the water's got to go out of. That's why, like, when people are like, "Oh yeah, tidal river, the Pascatank, and tidal river, the Albemarle," I'm like, as someone who's been there, I'm like, "There's no tide. Like, you cannot account for a tide. The
Yeah.
Roanoke has current, but that's a natural. It's a one-way current. It's all
Yeah.
flowing out.
Well, and that's a thing that, especially if there's not much of a tide, I mean, that's gonna keep the fresh water even further because,
Hmm.
all the rivers flow out. So
Hmm.
your water that's getting pushed through there is fresh water.
Hmm. Yep. And the Roanoke is the only one that I know of that has like consistent current, and it'll slow down and pick up probably
Mhm.
with the tide. But I'm telling
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
the first time I went there, I expected to see a tide swing, and there was maybe like you might see an inch or two. Like it's nothing to account for.
Huh.
Those
So
guys are going to have a time.
so what do you think has it always been as good as it is now? Like, what has been keeping everybody else in the entire country from even knowing this place exists until, like, 2 years ago?
Uh, well, there's a few things. There's nothing down there. So like the city they're going out of, Elizabeth City, is it's a few people that commute up to the military bases in Norfolk and Chesapeake, which is like an hour and 20-minute ride,
Mhm.
and it's really ghetto.
Mm.
Like there's nothing out there. There's the Virginia Beach clubs go down there.
Yeah.
Um, and they're small little clubs. They're not BFLs. The facilities aren't that good.
Yeah.
They're the ramp they're going out of, the only way they're able to do it is because the city, Elizabeth City, is probably allowing them to use the park next to it as parking. Because it probably only has 25 boat parking spots.
Sheesh.
So like it's not a big ramp. The biggest ramp is at Edenton, which is actually on the Sound. It's where we go out of for our tournaments down there. And the problem with it is if it blows, you can't run the tournament because it's on the Sound.
Yeah.
Now most of our local tournaments have a trailer policy if it blows. But like, I don't know. I think it's a combination of that. There were some guys posting stuff down on the Roanoke and stuff in North Carolina. But again, there just wasn't facilities to have a BFL. There still isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
To have a BFL, things like that there. Edenton is the best ramp to do it at. And that's why MLF came there, is because they saw the traction. And frankly, that who's the guy that they have, JT Kenny, he knows a bunch of guys in that area that I think he was a big part of getting them there. And
Yeah.
I don't think Bass would have gone there if they didn't go there, personally.
Probably not.
I think Elizabeth City saw what happened to Edenton, which is a cool little, like, call it quaint town. Like
Yeah, yeah.
there's nothing, just old people.
Yeah.
So I think that's all it is. I mean,
But even, like, not from a tournament perspective, like, it seems so sick. And I mean, you know how it is. There's a lot of places around the country that, aren't tournament lakes, will never be able to be tournament bodies of water, this, that, or the other. But when it's that good, you hear the buzz about it. Like the locals down there did a pretty good job of not letting people in on it.
I think the part of it is like the locals that are there were not social media locals. So like Headwaters in Texas or in Florida, I mean,
Yeah.
like there's going to be guys there posting YouTube videos and stuff like that. Ivy, or
Yeah,
whatever,
I was a
Eagle Mountain.
contributor to that.
Yeah, all these places that people post videos at, right? Like it goes crazy, right? So they're out there though, like it's just a bunch of old folks. And
Yeah. Just having a good time.
yeah, and they're like, we have our secret and we're not going to talk about it. And it's a blast. Now it can be really tough, just like anywhere else.
Yeah, of course.
And they have it's very like they had a fish kill after one of the big hurricanes, and it was pretty bad for a few years after that. It's really good right now. I mean, it's tannic water, like fishing in Florida, like cypress trees and tannic water. Like it's the closest thing to Florida other than Florida.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I'm sure they're a lot less moody than Florida fish are.
I mean, I've had plenty of suck fests there, but like, I think the
Yeah, but if it's 5 degrees colder for a day, they're not going to completely stop biting.
No, I don't think so.
I hope.
I've fished a bunch of club tournaments down there, but like I've won a club tournament on that place with like 13 or 14 pounds, like where it was just terrible.
Yeah.
But that day, I mean
it could happen anywhere.
But that day, I think I missed 25 on a frog and like good ones. Like they were just headbutting it. And like, so probably if they actually eat it, which you never can predict, get, a higher bag. But that place is really cool. Like I'm so excited to watch that tournament.
So am I. When I saw that on the schedule, I was like, for one, I'm always just jacked up to see something different.
Mm-hmm.
And two, something that like, ever since around the Chowan, like a little bit before that Chowan River event got announced, you started hearing a little bit of buzz about the place and stuff. And it's just like, that to me is like the lost, slightly southern brother of like the tidal system down the coast that we have here. That's like my bread and butter and like some of my, I guess you could say favorite, but less so favorite and more so just like most like important to me, places. And I'm just excited to see what it looks like.
I wish so. Like, where do you think if you could pick somewhere that could actually host a classic, like has the facilities, the people that would come to it? Like, what comes to mind for you?
Well, the thing that gets me is like how it has to all of a sudden be in March every year now.
No, yeah, I'm saying a place that could have a good tournament in March. It has to, and it's going to has the facilities to do the expo, the weigh-in within an hour of the ramp, or even an hour. It's an hour from the ramp. A fishery that's big enough to hold a classic, which is only 55 boats, but they like it to be a bigger fishery.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like the fishery, but a place I'm surprised there hasn't been one is Charlotte on Lake Norman.
I agree. That's one that comes to mind immediately. Like they did Red Crest, but I'm sure Red Crest is a lot cheaper than
the
classic.
I mean, that's the one to me that jumps out as far as like city, like I went to the classic in Birmingham that was on Gunnersville.
And they were going an hour and a half each way.
That shouldn't be a thing.
No.
It was brutal, dude. It was brutal. Like, and I get that that's kind of how it has to be, but also like if you didn't have to have it in March, it opens yourself up to a lot of things. Like you could definitely do a classic on the Potomac.
Yeah. I think
Be a little bit of a gong show, but guess what? Dallas.
where would you, I guess you could do it over in like the DC area. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
plenty of places over there. I don't think that you could.
you would have to launch from the Virginia side, but
You'd have to do it out of Louisville.
yeah,
I don't know. I think that would be a mess. Dude, the one that comes to mind, and it's probably biased, but I think that Richmond could host it. We've hosted 3.
yeah,
Now, they were the old school ones, but like the ramp that we go out of for all the big tournaments,
it definitely could.
Bassmaster paid half the
Definitely
bill
could.
to have it built back for those classics. Like
Yeah,
the city's 20 minutes away. All the convention centers from where that ramp is, the ramp is giant to have expos. It's a 6-lane ramp, parking, fields, and they would smash on them. And it would have drama. It would have long runs.
you're absolutely right.
I
100%.
hope they don't, because they would show everything here. But like, I kind of hope they do, because it would be really awesome.
Yeah,
But we got such a liberal ass city; they would never pay to have fishing come to it.
yeah. I think that's the problem with a lot of with a lot of places is like I think probably why they haven't had it in Charlotte is because Charlotte's a big enough city that they're just like I don't care.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it would be. They have so much else going on there that like
Yeah.
it'd be hard to promote it.
Which is why I'm surprised that like even like the DFW area cares about. I mean, I guess it's because it's Texas. I think that's why it's Fort Worth and not Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
But also, everything's different in Texas. You know.
Yeah.
But that's why they have it in Tulsa, Oklahoma every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're comfortable there. That's the type of place that'll pay for it. That's why they have it in Anderson, South Carolina every 3 years. That's why they have it in Knoxville every like. There's only the way they have it set up now and what it demands. There's only, there's not that many places you can do it.
No, and like they're like even saying Richmond, like I helped when I was in high school pull the boats around for the drive back when Bassmaster College Series had drive-through weigh-ins.
Uh-huh.
My buddy was the VCU coach at the time. I guess he's my dad's buddy technically, but he called me and he was like, "Hey, can you come help pull trucks around for this tournament?" He was like helping court. He was like the host, right?
Uh-huh.
That was back when Bassmaster did like host schools for all their stuff.
Yeah.
And dude, it was a nightmare.
I'm sure.
And that was just for 15 boats to do a drive-through weigh-in on a college final day. Like now, I'm sure that for the classic, there's going to be police shutdowns and things like that to allow. Because the problem we had was you had to go around the block. Well, I'd get hung at this light every time because in order to not drive their trailer over a brick wall, I had to swing out into the other lane, and people would pull all the way up at the light, and I'd have to be like, "Go," and they would just be like. So it just took forever. But yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare of an event, but.
Yeah, I mean, not every place has a stadium and a convention center, like, plus a lake with bass on it.
Hey, but tidal fishing makes good TV.
Yeah.
Big bass. I mean, that's in their name, right?
What about, obviously you can't do it in March, but what about Sandusky, Ohio?
It would be epic if they did it in like,
or for that matter, Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of them could do it if they did a summertime.
I mean, they used to do them. They did one in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and took 12 pounds to win over 3 days.
It was horrible. But speaking of which, I've got some birdies on the inside.
Yeah.
That say that place is like good now. Like
I heard it wasn't that bad then either.
Yeah, I think it was a particularly. I mean, they did in like August, I think.
Yeah.
but apparently there's like grass there now,
Oh,
like
really?
fishable beds of grass there. And like, you know,
Boys trip?
I mean, it's not like it's insane, but compared to what you saw there, I mean, people are catching, into the 20s there now,
Wow. Yeah.
which it's not every time. I mean, your average tournament there is probably one in the high teens, but like still,
It
it's a
reminds me of Bugs Island. Like
big upgrade from what it was.
Bugs Island used to be like 20 pounds. We'd be like, what? And now it's pretty common to see 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And I do think that has a lot to do with live scope.
I was just gonna ask that. You think that's a scope deal? Because that's what my guess would be.
The fishing is getting better there. Like I can tell you as someone that scopes, but isn't like I prefer to turn it off.
Mhm.
Like 3 years ago, you would go around the lake and you would catch a million 8 inchers. And I would tell everybody, like, this place is going to be good in 3 years. And it's now you catch a bunch of 2 pounders. So,
Yeah.
like, they're growing. And I think this place is a couple years from busting at the seams as long as they start holding the water or keep holding the water higher in the spring like they have been. Because the
Yeah.
problem in history was they used to let the spring rains come and they would suck it out to 298. And the spring rains would come and they would get up to 305 and it would suck it out to 298. I mean, it would leave. We used to see all the time beds high and dry. Where now they don't like to drop it below 302 unless they have to in the spring. And they
Mhm.
can only drop it at a certain rate because there's a protected striper run in the spring down the chain where the saltwater hits. So they
Mhm.
can only pump but so much current now. So
Ah.
like, and we had during the COVID year, it stayed at 305 to 310 for like a month and a half right after the spawn, which helped a lot of that fry and stuff live.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like the year after that, it stayed like 304 for like the whole spring. So like we've
Well
had good spawns there, and I think that's that age class finally growing.
well, that's what I was gonna say. I was there in it makes sense saying the COVID year because I was there spring of 23.
Mm-hmm. I
It was like the last week of
remember
April.
when you went there.
Yeah. I remember talking to you. And I mean, the water was at like 302, 301, so it was up there, but not like crazy up there.
Yep.
But I mean, I was catching 40, 50 fish a day up in the
Mm-hmm.
bushes. Like it was a blast. And not all of them were giants. I did catch some big fish. I caught a 5-pounder on the first day of the tournament in a bush, which was sick. I caught a few, in that 3-pound class range.
Remind me
But
to send you my clips from out there this weekend. I got some good ones.
oh, please do.
Don't post them, but because the bait is very, very obvious.
Okay, okay.
But I got some good. Like I'm running the GoPro and it's just right in front of the lens going by. But that I got some good clips. But yeah, that place is good. Sorry.
But the point I was gonna make was most of the fish I was catching were like what you would guess would be 3-year-old fish,
Mm-hmm.
14 inches,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean I was catching 40 of those a day, which you would imagine a lot of them come from that
Mm-hmm.
potentially 2020 year where you say that the water stayed high.
Yeah, and you know what's in there now a lot is spots.
Yeah. I remember because when I went there, I launched like the first day I got there. Like I was driving all morning and I got there like later in the afternoon. I launched at like some random ramp like up towards the dam.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's where a lot of them are. Is up
yeah, well,
that way.
right away I started catching a bunch of spots and I was like, I didn't know this was a spotlet. Like I was like, I know they exist in here, but I didn't think this was like a lake where you could like catch spots. And I was like talking to guys and they're like, yeah, it's kind of just starting to happen, but I caught it. I didn't fish for them in the tournament because they weren't big, but I caught a ton of spots.
Fished a BFL there last year, and big fish was a 5 1/4 spot. Yeah. I just saw 5 1/4 was big fish and was like, oh yeah, that's Bugs Island. And then like saw the picture of it and I was like, huh? And like a lot of these big bags we've been seeing this winter with guys scoping have been with spots in the bag.
Well, that's another thing that was starting to happen more and more when I was down there. What's the distribution on the blueback deal now?
I know that I fished the cat championship there last year, and we were not on a blueback spawn. We were on a shad spawn.
Mm-hmm.
But like my buddy should have won that tournament. He dumped a bunch of fish the last day. He was power pulled down doing a Hartwell shad spawn deal. He was power pulled down on the against the bank, casting out onto the point like a 1.5 feet of water, and they were just blasting. And he was on a blueback spawn, and he said you'd hook the bluebacks every now and then.
Wow.
It's similar to Smith Mountain in the fact that like guys are winning on it and catching them on it right now, but it's not like the only way to get bit.
Yeah, it's not the dominant bait fish yet, but it's
pretty dominant in both of them.
You think it is?
Yeah, it's pretty dominant in both of them, but like you can still go get bit doing other things. Like
because when I was there, it was like by the end of the week, I felt like I could tell the difference on my live scope.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was seeing balls of threadfin and balls of bluebacks, and I saw a little bit of like threadfin spawning going on. I didn't see any. I think it was probably on the very, very beginning of that happening and probably way too early for the bluebacks, but you could see like you could tell the difference in the bait balls. Like the threadfin were more of like your typical like circular bait ball that was kind of just like hanging out, whereas like the bluebacks would be in like strips and they're cooking, like cook, which always surprises me because it seems like anywhere bluebacks show up, bass prefer to eat them, but it seems like they would be way harder to get your hands on.
They must be like cocaine. I have no idea.
Right? Like they gotta taste great to them.
Yeah. Or have be packed with protein or something.
Because they're the fastest moving things going, but the big fish, the biggest fish in the lake that you would think would be the laziest fish, that's all they want to eat.
I think, I don't know. That's why the spot lakes, you really see them like key in on the blueback, and that's like the only way to get bit is because the spots like to run. But like a lot of these largemouth lakes like Murray and stuff like that, it's not the only way to get a bite.
No, for sure not.
That's kind of the same deal at Bugs and Smith Mountain.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, especially like in somewhere like if the water's high in Bugs and it's in the bushes and stuff like that, like there's gonna be bluegill eaters no matter what, you know, like.
I hope this storm brings the water up because they were busting at the seams, flooding the bank last weekend. Like they weren't. I saw one on perspective that I think was on a bed. I had one pick up and move my bait like a buck would on a bed.
Really?
But like it wasn't wide open, and the water's pretty dirty right there, so it's hard to look. But from perspective, you'd see signs of it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're on it yet. The water temps are still in the high 50s, low 60s. Like you can find areas with 65, but like if we get and the water's not very high. So I feel like if you have high water, they're more likely to flood up because they feel comfortable. Where if you have low water, they're going to wait until the last second because they're like less comfortable. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it, but
I would think so, just because like, you know, more often than not, a bass wants to be like near or up against something to make their bed. They don't necessarily want to just spawn on like sand open bottom. And a lot of like those bushes and good structure. Like I said, when I was there, it was 301, 302, and a lot of those good bushes and on the shore structures were like only a foot in the water.
Yeah, 302 is like my favorite water level there, though, because it's
Yeah, I mean,
isolated enough to where like you can pick out your targets that'll be good, but there's enough to where you can fish a lot of it. But like
I loved it.
305, it's like almost overwhelming.
Yeah, I would imagine, because a lot of the stuff that I was fishing would be like completely submerged in 305.
Now imagine like 313. Like I fished there with 313. I caught one off of a cross that's at the campground where they have church service every Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
Like that was crazy because like you go back and I had never fished with it that high, and I'd be like, why did I catch him here? And you look and there's a giant rock formation under the bush that you caught him out of, and you're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah, I mean that 301, 302 where I was fishing as like it's like a pretty savvy, like visual, shallow water fisherman. Like I feel like I am. Like
Yeah.
it was one of those places where I was able to really key in on like specific stuff, and like I just got so comfortable so fast there. Like I really, really enjoyed my time there. Like
Yeah.
I could fish there all the time. I'm sure it's not always like how it was when I was there, but I had a blast.
Yeah, it gets tough there in the summer in particular. Like
Oh yeah.
they get out and it's hard to catch them. But the more I fish there, the more I like that place. And normally it's the opposite with most places.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's like the only place I can think of that's like that is like the Bay in the Potomac for me. The more I fish there, the more I like it. I think that's just because those are places you got to know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think Bugs is the same way.
Well, all right, we've gone almost 2 hours now. I think that'll
do her.
go good enough. I mean,
We'll have to give Zub and Brennan a hard time. I mean,
yeah,
I stayed up just to see their pretty faces.
I've already given them enough of a hard. I mean, I give these guys a hard time like every week, and they're still like, it's whatever. They're the worst. We'll just leave it at that.
That's fine.
But especially once tournament season starts going and you have a couple big finishes like I know you're prone to,
We're gonna try.
we'll have to get you back on later in the spring or over the summer with the full crew and go over how we've all been doing.
Yeah, let's do it.
100%. Yeah, that was a great conversation because we just started talking and I didn't even like ask or think about any questions that I prepared. So I'll take that any day. A lot of good nuggets in there too for if people stuck with us for the whole 2 hours.
100%.
All right. Well, Blake, I appreciate you having you.
Really, boss.
There you go. I appreciate having you on, and I will catch you next time, which will be probably in the summer.
We'll see you.
Thank you guys for tuning in.